All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, whereas that there's a battle to make the college football playoff, you also have to look at the overall landscape of the game. And in doing so, you will see that some storied programs have really fallen by the wayside this year and in the last several seasons. This year, as an example, Florida State, Nebraska, Miami, Texas, USC, Florida, and LSU could all finish the season with losing records. And to give you an idea of how strange that is, these seven programs have combined to win 14 national titles since 1991. Now, make no mistake about it, parity is the king of college football in the present game, and the television contracts in these conferences, well, for the most part, they equally pay out money among the members, and that has really changed some things. But you look at some of these programs, Miami no longer has the vice grip over South Florida as far as that region goes to get high school talent, and the same could be said for USC in Southern California and Texas and the Lone Star State as well, as they really now have to roll up their sleeves and compete. Whereas once upon a time, a head coach at Miami, a head coach at Texas, a head coach at USC, all he had to do was, go to a recruit's living room in that respective region, and he was going to walk out with a commitment from that kid to play football for him. Those days are over. Several of these programs could also be making coaching changes this offseason. We've already seen LSU part with Ed Orgeron. We also saw USC part with Clay Helton as well. And you look at it and you ask yourself, how did the fall for some of these programs happen? Nebraska, to me, has been chasing the glory days of Tom Osborne. And of course, Tom Osborne was and still is a very legendary figure over the Cornhuskers football program. It looked like Bo Pelini was going to be the guy, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, but he was let go due to the fact that he didn't win enough big games at Nebraska. All he did was win, but he didn't win a conference title, whether it was the Big 12 or the Big 10. And Nebraska has not recovered since then. They're being patient with Scott Frost. Of course, Scott Frost is an alum from Nebraska, helped them win a national championship as a starting quarterback in '97, and he's had to make some adjustments. So 2022 rather is going to be a make or break year for him. Florida State had their guy to segue from Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo got them a national championship, and Jimbo had Florida State back to being a perennial top 10 program. But there were money issues. Jimbo was looking for more money, and the powers that be at Florida State didn't want to pay him. Jimbo's at Texas A&M doing the same thing that he was doing at Florida State, sans a national title yet. But nonetheless, Florida State's program has been in shambles ever since then. You look at Florida; they flirted with getting back to greatness, but they haven't been able to replicate what they had under both Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer, respectively. And of course, Steve Spurrier in the 90s, his Florida program was in the top 10 darn near every year. And, for his sake, he benefited partially from when Miami got hit with the sanctions because more of those guys that typically would go to Miami started going to Florida. Urban Meyer, came in after Florida had a step back, got them a pair of national titles. It looked like it was going to be a perfect fit for a long time, and then he left. It's been hit or miss since then. Will Muschamp had a sign of greatness, then he fell off. Jim McElwain got Florida to a couple of SEC championship games where they got blown out by Alabama. Now you have Dan Mullen, and Dan Mullen, in some people's eyes, they feel like Dan Mullen's on the hot seat. And I mean, Florida's 5-5 this year. They had to struggle to beat Sanford, which is not going to look well in a lot of people's eyes. But at the end of the day, Dan Mullen is still 34-14 in 4 years as the head coach at Florida. And with the exception of this year, Dan Mullen has gotten the Gators to a New Year's Six bowl game in each year. So that definitely is going to count for something. I think there are going to be a lot of tweaks made to this Florida program this offseason. They've already fired their defensive coordinator. I think there are going to be more coaches on that staff that are not going to be retained for 2022. But I think nonetheless, you think about the wins and the money that Dan Mullen has brought into that program. I think he definitely gets a reprieve for 2022. But Florida, they're still chasing what Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer were able to do with that program. USC, I don't care what anybody says, SC has not yet recovered from the sanctions that they were hit with by the NCAA more than 10 years ago. We saw, USC get win the Pac-12 a couple of years ago. We saw USC get to and win the Rose Bowl under Clay Helton, and a lot of that was done due to Sam Darnold as his starting quarterback. But the bottom line is, like I said before, Clay Helton was on borrowed time from the moment that he was there because he was a guy that most people didn't want. USC has gone through several coaches. Each time they thought they had their guy, they thought they had Lane Kiffin, and now Lane Kiffin is doing a tremendous job at Ole Miss. They thought it was going to be Steve Sarkisian, and the thing is, it didn't work out, and it's Sarkisian's fault why it didn't work out at USC. And now USC's got to go out there, and they still got to try to find another head coach, and they got to find a guy who is going to hopefully, for their sake, bring the Trojans back to the glory days because that is what the people that follow this program in the Los Angeles area are seeking. You look at it, the same thing with Miami. I mean, Miami, when you think about what the Canes did in the 80s and 90s, up until now, with what Alabama has done under Nick Saban, that was kind of the gold standard for a program for the longest time. And, constantly being in contention and winning the national championship, winning 5 national championships from 1983 to 2001, sending a slew of talent to the NFL, and, of course, producing some Hall of Famers with it as well. Miami's got to try to find a way to get back to that. But, it's easier said than done. And then, the same thing with Texas. They can't get the top guys within their state to come there like they did once upon a time. There was a time where Texas, all they had to do was say, you know what, come to Texas, and that was good enough. That doesn't work anymore. The game has changed. So you look at it and you have to ask yourself, can anything change soon for any of these programs going forward? I think it's going to be toughest for Texas, LSU, and Florida is due to the fact that the competition in the Southeastern Conference is so tough, and it's only going to get tougher now that Texas and Oklahoma are set to join that conference. And, for LSU, and I've said it before, and I will say it again, the expectations there in Baton Rouge are very high because think about it. The last two head coaches won national championships, and they both got fired. And it's because of the guy that was there before them and what he's doing now at Alabama. So you look at it, the next guy who comes in and takes over this football program knows that he's going to have plenty of resources behind him to go out there and recruit the top talent. And I mean, Louisiana is a talent laden state when it comes to high school talent. So I mean, you could have your pick of the litter there to get those kids to come play for LSU. That's not going to be a problem, but you got to go out there and win. And more importantly, you have to find consistency at the quarterback position. That is what did in Les Miles at LSU, and that is what has done in Ed Orgeron as well. He had that one great year with Joe Burrow, and LSU has really taken a step back at the quarterback position since, and that's a big reason why he will be shown the door rather at the end of the year. But the bottom line is in the SEC, there's very little margin of error. And you think about it, you have to see how the division rather, the divisions are going to get broken down once Texas and Oklahoma join. I mean, you look at it. I mean, take your pick: Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Kentucky has really stepped up. Tennessee is looking like they are ready to get back into the conversation under head coach Josh Heupel. So it's one of those where you really don't have a lot of margin for error in that conference on a Saturday basis. For me, I look at USC and Nebraska. First and foremost, they have to find systems and stick to it. And I think that played into the fact why Scott Frost is going to be given another chance for 2022. Like I talked about it a few days ago, Nebraska's schedule for next season is easier than it is this year. And on top of that, they have plenty of talent coming back. Scott Frost has had to make some adjustments to his coaching staff, and he'll probably make some more in the offseason. So they have an opportunity to step their game up. USC, they've got to find a guy, and they have to find a guy who everybody within this program respects and who's going to get back to basics with this team. And I think there's so much talent out there in the state of California that nonetheless they know that they can get a guy who can basically recruit, get the top guys there, coach them up, and have them ready to play and win on a Saturday and Saturday in and Saturday out basis. For me, Miami, they've been a shell of themselves since they joined the ACC. First and foremost, the Canes have never won the ACC since they joined the conference, and it's been nearly 20 years now. Hard to imagine, but yes, it is. Then on top of that, Miami is not good when it comes to their facilities. They don't even have their own football stadium. They're sharing it with the Miami Dolphins, and I really think that Miami would be better served with maybe an on-campus stadium, possibly in Coral Gables. We'll have to wait and see what happens going forward. But I think that's the biggest thing that hurts them. I mean, you think about the Hurricanes, they always have legends that are willing to come back and help this program. There's not a big game that I don't see Miami playing in where Ed Reed is not on the sideline coaching these young men up. And you think about Ed Reed. Ed Reed was a stellar player during his time at Miami, helped them win their last national championship. And this guy's a Hall of Famer, both in the National Football League or Pro Football Hall of Fame. And if he has not made the College Football Hall of Fame yet, I'm sure that he will. But nonetheless, Ed Reed is always there. You think about generations before him where guys always came back, and they still do. So the alumni are there, the football alumni, but they have to get the booster money to try to do things right, upgrade those facilities, and more importantly, get their own stadium. That's something that this program I really think needs going forward because, again, as much tradition as Miami has in their past, a lot of these young kids they don't know about it and they're not moved by it and they're not moved enough to quote unquote join the youth. So we'll have to wait and see what a program like Miami is going to do going forward. And there's also a possibility that their head coach Manny Diaz might not last past this season as well, as the Canes are currently 5-5 and they have to win at least one more game in order for them to be bowl eligible. The Knolls, they're no longer the top destination for high school talent in the ACC. That distinction falls to Clemson, but nonetheless, I think Mike Norvell is a work in progress. Went 3-6 last year. He's 4-6 this year. He has to win out in order to make a to be bowl eligible. They did win against their rival Miami yesterday. They still have their rivalry game with Florida to end the season, and you never know that game could see both of these teams coming in with a record of 5-6. The winner goes to a bowl game, the loser goes home. So that would definitely add some intrigue to that rivalry as well. And of course, that rivalry, Florida State and Florida, just like it was Florida State and Miami for so many years, top 10 matchups every year. These teams are duking it out for the national championship. Matter of fact, going back to the 97 Sugar Bowl, that game actually did decide the national championship between Florida State and Florida. So that gives you an idea of where this rivalry was once upon a time and where it is now. You look at it and you ask yourself, who has the best chance to turn things around? I'm looking at Florida State. First and foremost, I think that if they're patient with Mike Norvell, he's going to get his program in place and he's going to get things turned around. But again, they have to be patient. LSU, they have all of the resources behind them. They just have to find the right guy. But then that guy also has to deal with the expectations there. USC is going to be tricky. Nebraska, I think they have an opportunity if not now that they're sticking with Scott Frost. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out for Florida and Dan Mullen for the rest of the season. But nonetheless, make no mistake about it. Things have changed a lot for the landscape of college football. And when you think about the SEC, a lot of what Nick Saban has accomplished at Alabama has, really led to a lot of upheaval from a lot of different programs. LSU is now on their third different head coach since Nick Saban took over at Alabama. And you think about it, Urban Meyer was at Florida when Nick Saban came in. You've now gone from Urban Meyer to Will Muschamp to Jim McElwain to now Dan Mullen and possibly somebody else for next season. So that just lets you know. And of course, other programs within the SEC have made changes and made multiple changes since Nick Saban was first came in. So that just gives you an idea of about the cloud of aura and intrigue and mystery that is hanging over the SEC due to the dominance of the Crimson Tide under head coach Nick Saban. But nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see what some of these storied programs do this offseason. They got to find the right coach first and foremost. They have to get everybody on the same page. The road back to the top is not going to be easy because the landscape has changed in college football. But hopefully, for the sakes of these respective blue bloods, they can figure it out sooner rather than later. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you are on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.